We see a population, large numbers of children and women that have already endured more than 17 years of a very rigid regime of allowing goods into Gaza. I think even in 2022, the United Nations and others said that 80% of the population, lived on humanitarian supplies. And that's just become even more pernicious since the 8th of October with all the other restrictions. It seems everybody in the international firmament has spoken with grave concern, extreme concern, but we haven't seen food, water, medicines go to the most vulnerable, and they have those rights, not because of something that I'm saying, it's because it's required in the Geneva Conventions and it's required in the Rome Statute. Some of the words uttered by the two individuals, Minister of Defence Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu, are of course probative and relevant. The fact that so many other individuals have said, words like there's no such thing as an innocent civilian in Gaza, they're all responsible. The words by members of the Security Committee, there's a whole variety of words that are said and done by the government that have not been disowned, that have not been denied, that the two individuals have not disassociated themselves from, and I think that's relevant. But it's a very complex operation. It's not just the denial of aid. It's not only the fact that as an occupying power, Israel has an affirmative obligation to make sure food and the objects indispensable to survival get to the civilians. They have an affirmative obligation. They're in control of the north of Gaza, for example. IDF tanks are in situ. They could guard aid convoys going in and making sure it goes to the camps. They're not doing that. But in addition, one has to look at a wider aspect. Water has been cut off. Electricity has been, plants have been either destroyed or targeted. Fuel can't go in. Desalination plants are completely dysfunctional. There's no desalination plant in the north of Gaza at all. Water purification tablets, filtration systems have been classified as dual-use objects, as have incubators, as has oxygen for hospital, as have anaesthetics. One sees 90% of all the greenhouses in the north of Gaza destroyed. 40% of the land that was used for agriculture has been destroyed since the conflict started. 70% of the fishing vessels. Every avenue that is so important to human survival has been constrained or suffocated because of a policy. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been on the record to say that the access of humanitarian aid gives Israel important leeway that is being used. They've talked about a diplomatic iron dome as part of allowing aid in and not allowing aid in and all the rest of it. Israel has every right not to give succor to Hamas. That is not contested. Israel has every right and indeed an obligation to get hostages back. But you must do so by complying with the law. The fact that Hamas fighters need water doesn't justify denying water from all the civilian population of Gaza. There's an obligation. As I said, it's an affirmative. In addition to everything else, there's an affirmative obligation as an occupying power that Israel is to make sure water, medicines, anesthetics, insulin goes to the people that need it. If tanks can go in, why can't those tanks and those soldiers guard aid convoys? So there's a lot of deficiencies that give rise not just to recklessness or negligence or indifference, but seems to be part of a criminal common plan to deny these objects indispensable to the survival of the civilian population. And how many doctors have to talk about amputating the limbs of little babies or children without anesthetic, or how many people need to die without insulin, or how many people with 50% burns can be left by the doctors in the different hospitals because they don't have antibiotic creams for burns and they can't save them without that, for us to realise that the law is being breached. Now, this is what we have analysed, and we've presented it for judges who will make the final decision if warrants should be issued or not. This court, Christian, is a child of Nuremberg. It was built because of the awful pictures that haunt us today of the Shoah and the gas chambers and then the Balkans, and the list goes on. And we have to look at the evidence. And the way I very simply try to do things is look at the evidence, look at the conduct, look at the victims, and airbrush out the nationality. And if a crime's been committed, we should move forward. Nobody is above the law. No people, by dint of birth or passport, religion, nationality, or the colour of their skin, have a get-out-of-jail-free card, have a free pass to say, well, the law doesn't apply to us. This is a moment when we see in the shadow of Ukraine a increasing cacophony of noise, of double standards and selectivity. And what we're trying to do is not go with a tide of emotion, but take our time, move as effectively as we can, but be guided by evidence. And every human life, every baby that is killed, whether it's a baby that's cruelly abducted by Hamas and killed, or a baby that's been bombed or killed or has died in incubators because of no electricity or water or food in Gaza, for them, for their families and humanity, it's a tragedy. And this is why we have a court. It's about the equal application of the law. No people are better than another. No people anywhere are saints. And so we have to apply a yardstick of legality to conduct. We've done that, and this is why we've made the applications that the judges must determine. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry, to something bigger than ourselves, which is the fidelity to justice. And we're not going to be swayed by the different types of threats, some of which are public and some maybe are not. We have really sincerely looked at things with a broad horizon, looking at incriminating and exonerating evidence equally, looking at evidence, authenticating the evidence, and realizing that we're not worth the job, the title as being a prosecutor or being lawyers or having an international criminal court if we are dissuaded because of extraneous interests from moving forward. Because at the end of the day, I go back to this basic premise. A child in Myanmar that's persecuted, or a child in Israel that is an orphan or that has been taken and killed, or one in Ukraine, for their family, there's no difference. Their universe has been torn to shreds. And this is the need for the court and independent judges to scrutinize, not look at the politics, not look at a dysfunctional Security Council, not look at the difficulties it may cause, regional organizations or different groupings, but simply say, is the evidence reliable? And if so, we go back to King John, that the king is under no man but God and the law. We all must be subject to that. Otherwise, what is this international rules-based system? What is the principles of public international law that so many men and women have given their lives for since the Second World War, particularly? And I think it's a dishonor for them. It's a dishonor for the victims of the gas chambers if we airbrush out inconvenient truths. And we have to try our best to achieve justice for the victims of the 7th of October. We also must try our best to do justice for so many innocent people that are suffering as we speak in Israel and also in Gaza, as well as in other parts of Palestine.
Prosecutor Karim Kahn, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.